A major revolt hit our political system after the 1974 election, and it changed everything for good. The Congress, the presidency, the way power works at the heart of our government.
It was unheard of. 75 new Democratic members of the House demanding and getting a Q&A session with the big legislative barons. More chairmen are due tomorrow, Saturday, and Monday, and for many of them it will be the ultimate indignity, actually having to account for themselves to a group of freshmen, none of whom has been on the payroll for more than a week.
The country was changing. We were going through the shudders of the post-Vietnam era. We were going through the shudders of post-1968. You know, all of the search for identity in the country, and there was tremendous amount of hope in this new breed of people that came into the House of Representatives, and we felt that we really had the charter for change.
George Miller, class of '74 from Northern California, was 28 years old.
We wanted to be players. We wanted to be players right away. We obviously were thought we had the talent and the ability.
Steve Solars, class of '74, came from Brooklyn and quickly made his mark.
I used to think that the seniority system was the root of all institutional evil.
Tom Downey, class of '74 from Long Island, was the youngest freshman to serve in 2 centuries, barely 25.
There was all of the impatience of youth and the impatience of being a freshman.
It was a power earthquake that shook Congress and shifted power from the old guard to a new breed of Democrats. They were anti-leadership and pro-reform, sexy, sophisticated, ambitious.
It's like a schoolyard basketball game where everybody's shooting. There's nobody passing. And that's what it's like with the new breed. They're all pumps. They're all guns. Give them the ball, they shoot it.
They got personal power and influence by playing a new style of game. Video politics, computerized mass mail, constant campaigning for re-election, relentless pursuit of visibility and campaign funds, jet planes home to cater to the voters. They operate as individual power centers, freer of parties, political machines, and leadership than ever before in American history. All that made for more democracy but less control. It blew the congressional power game wide open. I'm Hedrick Smith. This is the first of 4 broadcasts about the dramatic changes that have jolted our political system in the last 15 years since Vietnam and Watergate, making Washington a very different city from the one you likely read about in your civics textbook. This broadcast focuses on the revolution that has swept through our Congress, on the fragmentation of power and the drastic consequences of change. We begin with Tip O'Neill, who was Speaker of the House through 1986, saw the old order overturned with the coming of the class of 1974.
They demanded power. They said, hey, we got elected on our own, and we owe no responsibility to the Democratic Party other than the fact that we ran on their ticket. We want to be part of the action. And at that particular time, I think we went to 164 subcommittees. The power was spread all over the Congress. Mo Udall once made a statement, if you don't know one of these new young fellows, just call him Mr. Chairman and you're safe.
It's only Thursday afternoon, but Subcommittee Chairman George Miller is leaving the House for home. 40 weeks a year, he spends a 4-day weekend in California.
What steps to the Capitol? The East steps?
At Miller's office, the weekly panic has set in.
Left with the tickets.
Getting the congressman to his 5 p.m. flight to San Francisco.
Yes. Okay.
Take it over to him while
This is the worst.
He wants his briefcase and his gray suit bag.
It's a good 10-minute walk from there. It's going to be very close.
On Thursdays, John Lawrence does double duty, Miller's administrative assistant and valet.
Okay.
Let me read it over one.
Yeah, but let's just put in a thing about the city park, that we're concerned about the free transfer of the land to the city.
Here, George, here we go.
I got to run by the horseshoe and get my ticket.
3 other California Democrats share Miller's Thursday afternoon rush to the airport. Nancy Pelosi,
Leon's coming.
Leon Panetta, and Barbara Boxer.
It's a valuable opportunity to
And it's nice to have a break from here.
And the phones.
Especially if it's a good movie on the airplane.
And when you get off the plane, you're in California.
Yeah,
and that makes it all so worth it. Oh,
Bye.
In this world of fragmented power, the first law is individual survival. And the new breed play that game to the hilt. In their obsession with the techniques of staying in office, they have created a crippling tension between the demands of work in Washington and maintaining a presence with the voters back home.
I've had my family back here in Washington, back in California. Right now, I think this works out best. We've tried it every which way.
These 4 members are off to California Thursday afternoon and back Tuesday morning and away again next Thursday. That's why the House is often called the Tuesday to Thursday Club. The practice has some legislators disturbed.
Well, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday here are awful days. It's impossible to get a quorum without waiting an hour for your subcommittees and committees, without phoning all over the place and saying, please come by and make a quorum for just 5 minutes.
Don Edwards is also from California, and he hates what the Tuesday to Thursday Club has done to the House.
Your schedule is 2 pages, and you might have 2 or 3 breakfasts, 2 or 3 caucuses, 4 or 5 subcommittee meetings, interviews, and so forth, so you can only make about half of them, and you really can't pay enough attention to your work.
But for Catherine Lewis, Miller's receptionist, the short week has its advantages.
Fridays are a lot quieter. Fridays are easy. We wear jeans, and it's the time to get everything done that you didn't get done during the week when it was too hectic.
And Monday?
Mondays, it depends. Sometimes he's back. Sometimes he comes back on the overnight on Sunday night, and he gets in on Monday morning. But usually Mondays are quiet, too, so it's good. You could start off the week slow.
At 9 a.m. Friday morning, Congressman Miller begins his 4-day weekend working his home district. For him, it's political life or death.
Hi, how are you? Nice to meet you. We constantly remind ourselves around here, before you can save the world, you got to save your seat.
Hi, George Miller. How are you?
Nice, fine.
Congress demands that you go home and report to your board of directors, whether that's in front of the Kiwanis Club or the Rotary Club or in a town hall meeting or riding in a parade or going to the Safeway store. It's open season on you. More people have been defeated for going to London on the weekend than going back to Des Moines. And I think that you have to remember that.
We have faith on you.
When you're home all the time, you don't have as much courage because you're pushed and pulled by local concerns, by local power groups. You don't have the rather pleasant isolation of being 3,000 miles away if you're from California, where you can think, well, now, you know, what's really better for the country?
You guys did that. I asked Tony Quello, Majority Whip, third in command in the House, what impact the Tuesday to Thursday Club has on the House.
Very difficult for the leadership, but that's basically what we do. Very seldom do we have votes on Monday, and very seldom do we have even a session of the House on Friday.
You don't have to go home every weekend to keep in touch with your constituents. Another cornerstone of the constant campaign, subsidized by the taxpayers, is the mail frank. 535 members of the House and Senate send out about 900 million pieces a year, roughly 4 million pieces for every working day of Congress. That costs taxpayers $100 million a year.
I remember the first day when somebody came to explain to me that I could just sign my name up on the side of an envelope and it would actually get delivered was a real epiphany for me.
It was an epiphany for lots of other New Breed members, too. They were quick to tap the high-tech, computerized techniques of mass mailing, and yet convey the personal touch. The leader of the '74 revolt, Tim Worth of Colorado, specializes in narrowcasting. He divides his constituents into hundreds of target segments based on concerns they've expressed in letters to him.
How many different subgroups would there be in there of women's issues, environmental?
We had about 200, I guess, maybe more than that, breakdowns of issues. We had a whole lot. They wouldn't end up 4, 6, or 8 names in a category. It was unbelievable. It was very, very well honed by the time I'd finished 12 years in the House. We don't have anything close to that.
So somebody writes in on Central America, they go in the Central American issue from then on.
I would suspect that at one point we had Central America might have been broken down to Honduras, El Salvador, Guatemala, and maybe Costa Rica. I don't know.
Come on in. What's your name? David. Come on, David. Come on in. Where are you from? Come on over here. Western New York. Where?
Cheektowaga.
Cheektowaga. That is in the great county of...
Doing favors for the home folks is an old-fashioned technique. The New Breed have turned it into an industry. No one works harder than Alphonse D'Amato, a conservative Republican senator who keeps getting elected from a liberal Democratic state.
Wow, what a shirt.
Case in point, D'Amato arranged for Rima Brava, a Russian who was dying of cancer, to be reunited with her family in upstate New York.
I want to say it is the happiest day of my life.
Maybe Mr. Gorbachev is beginning to move to a new era. We'll watch. Hope.
D'Amato put himself in the picture when the press covered the reunion. That's the new breed wrinkle, grabbing every scrap of publicity for casework.
It's not the stuff that makes great news, but it's the stuff that's life and death to the people involved. Probably because the rest of the stuff, you don't accomplish too much. It takes an awful long time. I mean, you know what it takes to get a good piece of legislation passed? Even one that everybody agrees on? With the egos, the turf battles, the people who come together. Oh, no, you can't do that. It's in my committee. Oh, it's incredible.
Senators have their own version of the Tuesday to Thursday Club. 1 week out of 4, they take off from Washington. And that gives D'Amato time to promote a high media profile at home.
From WHEC TV, this is Rochester's news team with Maggie Brooks and meteorologist Mark Finan.
In 1 short week away from Washington, D'Amato hits 4 cities.
Now, live, the #1 news in the Capital District.
On Monday, Albany.
Have they formed a new relationship between the two nations?
On Tuesday, Syracuse.
Senator Al D'Amato continued to lash out at the Reagan administration, and Attorney General Meese today.
I recall having a battle with him when I said, why was he going along with cutting 300 DEA agents? And he said, we're winning the drug war. And I said, what planet are you on?
On Wednesday, Buffalo.
Family and friends, including U.S. Senator Alphonse D'Amato, gathered in the federal courthouse in Buffalo for Arcara's swearing in as a federal judge.
On Thursday, he even manages time for a showy appearance supporting the Pittsford volunteer firemen. Hardly the normal fare of a U.S. senator.
When we found out what this bill was and what it was going to do to us, we contacted them through letters and everything, and it's good to see that we got response and we got what we wanted here. It was going to have a tremendous impact here on Pittsford and all around the state.
Hey, now we put this guy in the middle. Come here, come here, come here. Let's pick his hand up there. We'll make him pick his other. How's that, huh? Are we your 2 champions?
Yeah.
Oh, all right. I mean, we had to say that for the video, huh?
I think New Yorkers are surprised because they've had men in the mold of Jake Javits and Pat Moynihan who tend to be more with national issues and so forth. But Al D'Amato makes no bones about the fact that his primary job here in the Senate is to make sure that New York gets its fair share of federal funds and is treated fairly. And, you know, I think that's probably a formula for success in New York.
Okay, Brian?
Yes.
Okay, the senator's here now. Jaron will be ready to go in about 1 minute.
The real cutting edge of the constant campaign is the satellite video feed. This is Senator Stephen Sims, Republican from Idaho. Like many of his colleagues, he is rarely seen on network news programs.
Now, is this going to be live, or is this...
No, we're going to tape this now and then...
But the Republicans have figured out how to bypass the networks, partly at taxpayer expense. Sims is just a flight down from his office suite in the studios of the Senate Republican Conference.
Yeah, I can hear a static buzz.
He is about to be interviewed by TV reporters, but they're 2,000 miles away.
How are you? I can't hear anything in that ear thing, so... Go ahead.
Hi, Senator. This is Brian in Boise. How are you?
Good, Brian. How are you doing? How's the weather today?
Beautiful. Thanks for bringing us some good sunshine and cool temperatures.
Sims can get his message and his image across to several 100,000 constituents in the 3 major cities in Idaho, virtually without leaving his office. Mass marketing with a home touch.
At this point, Brian, I would not be surprised to see this treaty.
The studio is a kind of public relations agency for Republican senators, and it's financed by a taxpayer subsidy of $565,000.
Finished, Brian? Yeah. Okay, Senator, this is Darren over in Pocatello. Can you give us a quick rundown?
Technically, the studio is transmitting a report home to the voters. Obviously, this is also the high-tech politics of the survival game.
Committee stays hitched and does not cave in to Senator Kennedy, then we'll win the vote. If the
Live from KPDI Channel 6.
Tonight, Senator Sims scores a bullseye. Prime time in all three cities.
The Armed Services Committee caves in to Senator Kennedy, we'll lose the vote. So
The Republicans pioneered this kind of high-tech politics, and the Democrats had to play catch-up.
We built a media center, and we bought all the modern equipment that you could think of. Why? Image. Today, what you need to do is to market whatever you're trying to sell. The American public, 60% get 100% of their news from TV.
Getting your face on television in your home district is the name of the game for incumbent Democrats.
You're going to ask him about the trade bill. Congressman,
What's my line? Just give me one straight
the line is, how important is the trade bill to this country? That's
How important is it?
Yeah.
What?
How important is the trade bill to this country? And they'll take it from there.
I'll try to get the
What articulation?
Okay, what you're going to do is look directly in the camera. There's your marker. Look directly in the camera. State your name and your district. Here, you stand right, your toes right in there.
Okay.
Perfect. How's that?
You know when you want me to start? I'm Congressman John LaFalce. I represent the 32nd Congressional District of the state of New York. That's Rochester, Niagara Falls.
Looks like Tuesday in the park outside the American Congress. Tourists, bunch of guys standing out on the green, but there's nothing casual about this picture at all. This is serious business, assembly line politics, high-tech politics, the politics of the constant campaign. What we have back here is 30 or 40 Democratic congressmen making statements, little video press releases to be beamed back home by satellite to the home state, home district television. That's what it's all about. Visibility, getting your face in front of the voters. A little package subsidized by the taxpayers or by your political party. All part of the constant campaign.
Congressman, how important is the trade bill to this country?
I'd say it's very important. I would hope very strongly that the president does not veto it. I think
A trade bill is absolutely vital for the economy of Massachusetts.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Stand there, you look straight at the camera, your name, your district, then I'll ask you. Hey, you
Good.
stand on your marker. I'm doing
Right,
fine.
like that.
You look straight in the camera.
All right.
Is it,
And this is live? So I can't,
well,
I can't
no,
make a
you
mistake.
can make a mistake.
I can make a...
Right, Terry? But we don't encourage it.
Okay. The trade bill is extremely important to this country and especially to my district.
Hey, if you don't get the word out, you don't come back. And you could be doing a great job. If people don't know about it, you go totally mort in this business, Cedric.
TV determined where I went. It, in a sense, determined a bit what I said, and it determined how I said it. I had to try, and I didn't learn this very well. I had to try to talk in 30-second clips.
Tom Eagleton, a three-term senator from Missouri, retired, disgusted with the constant campaign.
The modern young candidates, the Dick Gephardts, the Al Gores, can talk in 10 seconds, 20, and 30. You just tell them what you want, and they go click, 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 click. Old-fashioned politicians like me take 3 weeks to answer something.
The old guys schmooze, the new guys broadcast.
Chris Matthews was Speaker Tip O'Neill's media advisor.
The old guys prefer the company of a couple people. Tip O'Neill's idea of a good time is playing golf with 3 other guys. His idea of a great time in an evening is playing cards all night. Really serious card games. Imagine some of these new breed guys playing. Imagine Tim Worth playing cards. It's just absolutely impossible to imagine. Imagine Ronald Reagan sitting around playing cards all night. He'd say, where's the camera? What are we doing here? The new breed guys are happiest when they're on Meet the Press. That's heaven to be on Meet the Press.
And yet, Congressman, you are saying that asylum in this country would be a good idea for President Marcos.
If that's the price we have to pay.
It's not meet the press, it's work the press.
New York Congressman Stephen Solars, who...
And one of the best and brightest at that game is Congressman Steve Solars from Brooklyn, a quintessential new breeder and a member of the class of 1974. He's a master of all the survival games.
To the plant closing provision, I see absolute...
Even as a freshman, Solars was quick to carve out issues and become a spokesman. He's an active member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, now chairman of its Asian Affairs Subcommittee. During the controversy over the 1986 Philippine elections and the hidden wealth of the Marcos family, Solars appeared on 34 radio and TV shows and was quoted in 80 articles in the Washington Post, New York Times, and Wall Street Journal.
I think my efforts to focus public attention on the problem helped create the kind of climate in which it was much easier to secure support for my legislative initiatives designed to reshape the American foreign aid program and American foreign policy toward the Philippines.
Also enhanced your stature as a spokesman on the issue.
Well, I don't think it hurt, but I must say that that was the unintended consequence of the effort, the primary purpose of which was to have an impact on our policy toward the Philippines, which I think it did. I am probably the youngest grandfather in the House of Representatives.
Like Senator D'Amato, Solars works his home district, but his real beat is the Globe.
I presume we would save time if we left from Hong Kong than if we went to Honolulu and then flew back.
Absolutely. His travel schedule sounds more like that of a Secretary of State than that of a congressman from Brooklyn.
Is it quicker to go down to Colombia? You're doing it that way, and then I'm coming back?
That's right.
And then I get to Peru Tuesday morning. Oh, Tuesday evening.
Tuesday.
Wednesday, yeah, that's fine. Then I go to Costa Rica.
For just a 3-hour meeting, this is perfect, because it gives you just enough time to have a meeting with Arias and then fly out.
Solar's visibility and influence on Capitol Hill make him a champion fundraiser. Typical of the new breed game, he raises money all over the country, not just in Brooklyn. This is the start of a 3-day West Coast fundraising tour.
What a great idea to have it here. Really wonderful.
These Taiwanese Americans who want to liberalize Taiwan's autocratic government are here because Solars is a power on Pacific policy.
As you know, Congressman Solars is one of the very best friends the Taiwanese has ever had in the United States Congress. Appeal to you, my friend. Offer and give generously as much as you can. Who knows? He may someday realize the impossible dreams as president of this great United States.
On the Queen Mary, they have gathered to sing his praises and to sign checks to the Solars campaign fund, $15,000 in all.
I'm deeply committed to the cause of democracy on Taiwan, as I am in other countries around the world, and I'm very grateful to these people for their willingness to help me out in my re-election campaign.
You might wonder why Solars takes weekends away from his family to raise money far away, when he has a very safe Democratic district back home and $1 million campaign war chest accumulated and unspent over the years.
To what extent is that a deterrent that you also use, because you've established a considerable backlog of funds?
Well, I do have a substantial war chest, so do many other members of Congress. I've developed it not primarily as a deterrent, although I think it probably to some extent does have that effect, but essentially because under our current campaign spending laws, the most an individual can contribute to a congressional campaign is $1,000. I face the possibility that I might one day be opposed by a multimillionaire, of whom I have quite a few living in my district, who would be prepared to spend a few $1 million in pursuit of their own candidacy for Congress. I do not have...
That's an incumbent Democrat's view. Newt Gingrich, a feisty Georgia Republican, isn't buying it.
The Democrats have rigged the game in the House to avoid the right of free elections. They start with tax-paid incumbency advantages of about $1 million a cycle. So before your challenger even gets to run against you, you got $1 million of the taxpayers' money to spend on staff, on direct mail, on computers, on offices, on travel.
The statistics bear him out. In 1986, 97.7% of incumbents in the House of Representatives who sought re-election were successful. One reason is that the money game favors incumbents, and House members have pushed up the cost of their campaign sixfold in 12 years because they can raise money much more easily than challengers.
The first 11 elections I had, Hedrick, I averaged $20,000 a campaign.
President Gerald Ford served 13 terms in Congress.
My last 2 elections, I had an attractive, able, articulate Democrat candidate running against me, and I thought I better really go all out. So those 2 campaigns, 70 and 72, I spent $40,000. I happen to think half of the money was wasted. In the last election, in that same congressional district, the Democrat and the Republican each spent around $300,000.
So members virtually never stop raising money. In fact, the fundraiser is a Washington institution. This one is hosted by Minnesota Democrat Marty Sabo.
I told her she shouldn't miss this if she doesn't do another event in Washington.
That's right.
This is the greatest.
The goodies are towards the back.
Since he's a member of the Appropriations Committee, the party is well attended and expensive. The levy is $500 a head, paid by visiting constituents and lobbyists. Even those who protest the process, like Tony Coelho, get caught up in it. As House Whip, Coelho is a big draw for lobbyists. Tonight he's making appearances at 7 different fundraisers to help fellow Democrats raise money.
How much money do you raise at an event like this?
Well, it's varied from year to year. We're hoping this year it'd be around $75,000.
And you have another one of these events back home in Minneapolis, too, I understand.
Right. Not with quite the same Norwegian orientation because it's a different time of the year.
How much money would you raise at that event?
Oh, probably $25,000, $30,000.
I'm sorry, does that represent the bulk of your campaign money raising?
Yes. You know, there are other efforts going on, smaller events, but we generally have 2 big events, one here and one in the district each year. And then one also has a series of smaller events on a regular basis. It's an ongoing process.
Right, I understand.
In the Senate, fundraising is even bigger business. The average campaign now costs $3 million. In North Carolina's 1984 Senate race, Republican Jesse Helms and Democrat Jim Hunt spent a record $26 million.
Because I don't think the government has to be big to be good.
Bob Dole, he's our senator. Money equals television, equals 30-second spots, equals political campaigns. You see, that's what it's all about. The rest is just a bunch of frills. Handshaking, that's frills. Meeting with the voters, that's frills. Sending out a few press releases, that's more than a frill, but not terribly important. The key thing is to raise enough dough to buy those marvelous 30-second spots adjacent to the Bill Cosby show, or adjacent to 60 Minutes, or adjacent to the football on Sunday and Monday night, and to sell the candidate or bash the opponent in that 30-second spots. American politics is money and 30-second spots.
Money has always been the mother's milk of politics. Sam Rayburn, the legendary speaker, wasn't too subtle about it either.
Old Sam used to reach into his bottom drawer, pull out a wad of money, say, you got a tough fight here. Give you cash. Of course, in those days, nobody ever gave anybody checks. If you gave you a check, you looked at suspect at a person that gave you a check in the 50s.
What is new in the money game is the enormous sums now involved. The main new engines of fundraising are the PACs. PACs, Political Action Committees, set up by corporations, trade associations, trade unions, all kinds of special interest groups. PACs gather money from their supporters and funnel it to candidates. In 1974, there were 600 PACs, and now there are more than 4,500. Campaign contributions from PACs to congressional races skyrocketed from roughly $8 million in 1974 to $140 million in 1986. PACs go hand in hand with the lobbying game. Lobbies go after subcommittee members individually, and PACs reinforce that fragmentation of power. So how does it work, and what do PACs get for their money?
Political action committees, first and foremost, want winners. They're not sentimentalists. They're not theorists. They're not philosophers. They want winners. They want to buy a piece of a winner.
The cost of running for office today is outrageous. And as a consequence, we find good people becoming too dependent on lobbying groups, pressure groups, etc. We ought to put a limit on how much can be spent in a congressional race, senatorial race.
In his 1986 campaign, Congressman Sabo collected only $72,000 from individuals and almost twice that much, $139,000, from PACs.
To what extent would you say that the people who come here or contribute money to your campaign do so because you're a member of the Appropriations Committee?
Well, I suppose most of the folks here, I have some relationship to the committees we're on, but not in total.
Mm-hmm. And when they do that, what are they paying for exactly? Does that just mean sort of you'll answer their phone calls, or what does that mean?
Well, sometimes you've supported them, sometimes they're looking for access, sometimes they're, you know, just know that you're going to be there making decisions on things that come along. Some are here because they have a general interest in government. It's a variety of reasons that brings people to political fundraisers.
It is out of control. It's not per se illegal, per se immoral, or per se corrupting. It's the dimensions of it now, the numbers of PACs and the amounts of money they give, presidential and other campaigns, that needs to be restrained. What is being bought is access. If your industry, whether it's banking or airlines or whomever, gives a person on the Commerce Committee $250,000 for their campaign, and a year later or 2 years later they want to come in and talk to you about their bill, you're going to talk to them.
But Senator, isn't it much more than just access? Aren't you beholden?
You do feel beholden, and the way you express that is to open your door and let them in. Now, can my Uncle Fred walk into a senator's office? Of course not. That's the difference.
Of course, PACs want more than access. They want a congressman's vote on their side. One lobbyist was so brazen about it that he infuriated Democrat Andy Jacobs of Indiana.
A man representing a PAC which had contributed to my campaign in 1974 approached me after I cast a vote on the committee to reproach me for the vote I had cast, and reminding me of what they had done and what they won't do if I didn't straighten out in the following election. He actually seized my arm, and it was sort of a post-vote twist of the arm. And I tried to say something polite to him. I said, I think it was something along the lines of, take your hands off the suit, creep.
In short, he never took PAC money again and joined a small minority in Congress who operate that way. And Jacobs now makes a political virtue of running cheap campaigns. His only media buy is a televised viewer call-in the night before elections. Ask Andy.
Hello, you're on the air. Hello?
Hello.
But the PACs would not let Jacobs go. As chairman of the House Subcommittee on Aging, Jacobs opposed raising doctors' fees for Medicaid patients. So the American Medical Association tried to defeat him in the 1986 elections.
We don't expect to buy a congressman, and yet we would like to elect a person who is as close to our thinking as we can get.
The AMA's PAC spent $350,000, almost 9 times what Jacobs spent, backing Republican Jim Enan.
This will tell you all about me and why you need to vote for me.
Great.
And why it's time to get rid of Andy Jacobs.
You think so, huh?
20 years.
The AMA exploited a huge loophole in the 1974 Campaign Finance Reform Law. The loophole puts no ceiling on so-called independent expenditures.
This is an independent message, not authorized by any candidate, but brought to you only because we want Jim Enan in Congress.
But the AMA's effort boomeranged.
They proved not to be very popular, and you'd meet people in hardware stores and grocery stores and around town, so people who really didn't care for you otherwise, who would say, well, if the AMA is against you, you must be doing something right.
Jacobs defeated his opponent despite the AMA's huge expenditure. But other politicians targeted by powerful lobbies have been less fortunate.
Did you know Tom Eagleton voted against building the B-1 bomber, the MX?
In 1980, NCPAC, the National Conservative Political Action Committee, spent more than $1 million on a media blitz trying to unseat 6 Democratic liberal senators: Eagleton, Bayh, McGovern, Church, Culver, Cranston.
The price of bologna is really getting out of hand, especially in an election year. One very big piece of bologna is Birch Bayh telling us he's fighting inflation. The price tag on that bologna is $46 billion. If Bayh wins, you lose.
The TV viewer needed microscopic vision to realize these commercials were paid for by an independent PAC. In the end, 4 of the 6 target senators were defeated by conservative Republicans like Dan Quayle. In the face of the show-horse politics of the constant campaign and the fragmentation of power fostered by PACs, there is a crying need for someone to pull things together and make Congress work. The burden of that job falls on the workhorses of the inside game of Capitol Hill, and their work is mainly done not on the floor, but in committee. For example, the most powerful committee in the House is Ways and Means, which passes all tax laws and handles other big-ticket items like trade, Medicare, and Social Security. Its chairman is a tough Chicago ward politician named Dan Rostenkowski. Rusty is known for old-style politics, a potent blend of toughness, favors, and compromise.
Rostenkowski is available for interview in the gallery studio.
We're waiting.
Deadline, go.
Rosty's a physical political leader. He likes to control the gavel, control the room, intimidate and get the members to do what he wants to do in a physical kind of Tip O'Neill kind of fashion.
In his own committee, Rostenkowski's power is personal. It comes from being feared and respected, even loved, much as a tough football coach.
Is there a special kind of esprit or identity with your committee, and say particularly Ways and Means?
Yes, I believe so. And the reason for that is the father figure is, in fact, as well in his perception, a father figure, and that is Chairman Rostenkowski, who comes from the city of Chicago, who is an ethnic Pol who believes in the extension of the big family, and expects that those who have been friends will be rewarded and those who have been enemies shall be punished.
In 1985, Rostenkowski's hold was severely tested as he tried to shepherd President Reagan's big tax reform bill through Ways and Means. The committee became a battleground for the forces of the old power game against the new, a classic confrontation.
I hated to come to this office because I knew I was going to go into battle with my colleagues, trying to write a bill. But I was interested in proving to the world that the Ways and Means Committee, when asked to reform the code, when given an outline of what its responsibility is, that they'd meet the challenge.
The bill offered tax cuts to millions of ordinary citizens by closing tax loopholes worth billions to corporations. The oil, real estate, and banking industries, working the levers of the new power game, fought to defeat the bill, hiring hundreds of high-priced lobbyists to pressure members to vote their way.
That's where the terminology Gucci Gulch started. The Gucci shoes and the pinstripe suits. We were in the conference, and there was a provision on banks' bad debt reserve, and the banking community was pretty strong. We took a vote, and we lost. I mean, that's when some of the banking community, I think, overstepped their bounds. They were out in the halls dancing. It just tickled to death. It's all over. It's all over. Well, the politician that I am, I just adjourned the meeting. I wanted the press to kick us around for a week, and they did. It was almost at a point where my colleagues come and said, Danny, let's do something about this thing. I can't take the heat anymore.
What are you doing? You as chairman...
I'm making a guy's stew.
Right, you're shaming them for looking like prisoners of the special interest.
Yeah. And that's what happened. That's what happened.
Then he faced an uprising from committee members from high-tax states like New York and California, upset by a provision eliminating deductions on state and local taxes. One ringleader was his own protege, a sharp and bold new breeder, Tom Downey. This time, Rusty chose compromise.
One day, he called me into his office, the long table in the Ways and Means Committee room, 208, right off the Capitol that has in gold letters his name. And he sat at the head of the table. And the only thing missing was a candle for the meeting so that he could put it out when the meeting was over. And he looked at me and he said, I'm going to give you $65 billion and you better be with me on everything else.
I was getting so battered about state and local taxes that one day I just walked in the committee room after I had my staff put together the estimates on how much money we would lose or where it would cost us. I just announced that, okay, state and local taxes is off the table. And then things started to work in. But it was really because I had members who played the game with me.
And Rosti kept playing the game by doling out favors to line up the final votes in committee. It took his combination of toughness and vote bargaining to beat the special interests.
I think I ought to inform you that the fat lady has sung.
He has been, I think, a genius in the human dynamic of having people rally around him and to feel a sense of commitment to the committee and to the process back in 1986 of tax reform. I think that took a very extraordinary man to do it.
It's interesting. Rostenkowski, generally, at least among the press, is not known as a guy who masters the substance of a tax bill, but a guy who masters the human dynamics.
And it is vastly more important in the Congress to master the human dynamics than it is the substance of the issue.
And is that new style politics or really the old power game still at work?
Oh, I think that's politics as it's been practiced from the Greek city-states and will be practiced forever.
In the new power game, power has sprawled in many directions. Many senators and House members have found it slipping away to their own staffs. The explosion of staff on Capitol Hill is a startling phenomenon of the new Washington. Members needed more staff to keep up with the growing complexity and scale of government. Besides, as power spread to subcommittees, everyone wanted more staff. In sheer numbers and talent, the new breed staff are more pervasive and more influential than ever before.
It bothers me when I watch on television a committee hearing, and you've got a senator or a congressman of either party who's asking questions, and he gets the question handed to him by a staff member. When I voted for this senator or that congressman, I didn't vote for that staff member to provide the questions at a committee hearing. I voted for the member of Congress to develop the question himself.
The power of staff is a sensitive topic in many offices on Capitol Hill. But one senator willing to admit cameras is Arkansas Democrat David Pryor.
How does staff get so much power, and precisely what kind of power are you talking about?
Staff gets so much power, and it's our fault. This room that I'm in right now, this office in the old Russell building, and I like the building because of its old marble fireplaces and high ceilings. It's not very attractive and it's very junky, but it's historic. This room, for example, was occupied by a senator from Missouri by the name of Harry Truman. He had this office for himself, and he had 2 staff people assigned to him, sitting right in that next room. Now I've got 9 of these offices, plus committee staff all over the Capitol. That is the growth. And that probably is a reflection or a mirror of the complexity of our system.
Conscientious senators like Pryor are overscheduled and stretched to the breaking point.
Does the Little Rock Air Force Base have C-130?
Yes, sir, but...
He is a member of 5 committees and 6 subcommittees and chairs 4 of these.
This amount, and you bet at another base, and it's that amount. So
on a normal day, he has 3 simultaneous committee hearings, plus floor votes, meetings with other congressmen, lobbyists, and constituents.
Why not move the capital to Oklahoma?
Dependence on staff is inevitable. In addition to 5 committee staff, he has a personal staff of 19, including Kirk Roberts, his specialist on foreign affairs.
We have a 2 o'clock
hearing today, classified briefing first.
Okay. Maybe I'll have a few minutes before that to read over this. I imagine I will.
Oh, there's so much material there.
Yeah.
There really is.
It's always a problem.
Portia Middleman is his chief legislative aide.
You can focus on rural health care and the Aging Committee and as well as the Subcommittee on Health.
I think we've got to zero in on the rural hospitals reimbursement for Medicare versus the urban.
Jeff Trinka, 27, is his authority on finance.
I have a young man that is assigned to the Finance Committee, and when an issue comes up on Finance Committee, I call him in and I say, Jeff, tell me about the pros and cons of this thing. And maybe I'll have 4 minutes before we have a vote in the Finance Committee. I rely on his opinion.
I basically told Howie and his group afterwards that, you know, if you guys are going to do that, I don't want any posturing. I think
only a few years ago, Trinka himself was a tax lobbyist. Now he is the one being lobbied as an alter ego for a busy senator.
Jeff, of course, is a key player on Senator Pryor's staff who knows the area that we're here to articulate some concerns about.
This is Richard Brown, Senior Vice President of United Telecom, and 2 of the company's Washington-based lobbyists who deal with the staff, not with a busy senator.
So I flew here from Kansas, and Carol set up our schedule with the staffs of a number of senators, and Senator Pryor was the last on our schedule. You know, what we do, we want to do right and be able to stand the test of scrutiny, and
United Telecom seeks temporary relief from requirements of the '86 tax bill that Rostenkowski helped pass.
So American business has to individually decide how it values programs on its own when Treasury can't do it for us?
There's probably not going to be any legislation this year.
You mean any technical corrections?
No tax bill, nothing. So what you're talking about, the alternative is having nothing.
Staffers step in and act as surrogates for senators. Staffers extend their reach, their visibility and output. But the more the staffers do, the more power senators must surrender.
But I also know that they're humans, and they can be influenced. And maybe from time to time I make the wrong vote, but I hope it will never be because a staff member has intentionally misled me. If they have, they're not going to work here.
I know too many people around here that rely totally on staffs, and I doubt if they ever argue with them at all. Both in the executive branch.
You want to give any examples?
Yeah. No, I wouldn't do that.
What do you mean by that? I mean, do you mean literally they're taking their guidance on votes?
And on amendments from staff.
Without knowing the issues well
Without
themselves.
really getting into the issue and realizing what a stupid idea it might have been. See it all the time.
You hear the argument on Capitol Hill that Congress had to expand its staff to fight the executive branch. After Vietnam and Watergate, Congress did not trust the executive branch to tell it the truth about the economy or weapons systems or welfare programs. Congress wanted its own experts, its own budget office. Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan of New York.
But President Harding got a budget office. It took a generation, but we now have our budget office. So there's his budget and there's our budget, which is right. We need a third budget to sort of compare. President got a science advisor, we got an Office of Technology Assessment. It goes on, Rick, because we assume conflict in our Constitution.
Conflict. The classic game on Capitol Hill is the opposition game. The Speaker of the House versus the President. But the new TV technology of the power game and the power earthquake that shook up Congress 15 years ago changed all that. The Speaker of the House can no longer lead his troops merely by playing the old inside game. Speaker Tip O'Neill had to be transformed, gain a powerful public voice to do battle with the White House. But after the 1980 election, O'Neill found himself the head of a demoralized opposition party and facing the great communicator, Ronald Reagan. And in 1981, Reagan beat O'Neill time and again.
Oh, I would have defeat after defeat after defeat. I had people running away from me in my own party. There were a couple of people that, you know, you ought to quit and things of that nature. Never said it to my face personally.
What made matters worse, Republican campaign commercials in 1980 had ridiculed O'Neill as the epitome of the old breed Democrats.
Congressman, I think we're running out of gas.
It's not as if the Democrat Congress didn't have a warning. They'd been told for 25 years.
Congressman, we are running out of gas.
One Republican TV ad had a Tip O'Neill look-alike driving a car that was running out of gas. That caricature really hurt.
Hey, we're out of gas! The Democrats are out of gas.
Look at, I'm 70 pounds lighter than I was then. I was big and heavy and fat. And I used to say, you know, gray hair, unruly, cabbage ears, bulbous nose. Sure, I wasn't any... God doesn't give everybody a physique like Ronald Reagan.
Republicans smell blood, but by making O'Neill a personal target, they gave him a platform.
They created their own Frankenstein, in a sense. He had to deal with the fact that before millions of American viewers, he was being ridiculed, and he had to go back and challenge the attack. So in other words, they gave him his launching pad, and he took off.
I'll be with you in apple blossom time. I'll be with you to change your name to mine. Someday.
They had no idea he was going to put on the Irish Blarney and the Irish show, similar to what Reagan does. Put on a show, and he did it.
That the sun shines on today.
At a certain age, it said, all right, I've got to play a new game now. I mean, he's just going to change sports. And you know how different they are, wholesale and retail. I mean, Tip is the classic political retailer, the backroom guy, the guy who makes the deal with you, the guy who gets the bill passed. Television is totally different. Ronald Reagan isn't the backroom dealer. Ronald Reagan is the upfront character, and the speaker just decided he was going to play tennis with this guy, basically.
You can teach an old dog new tricks if the old dog wants to learn. And there's no question that I had to change my style, and I did change my style.
Armed with a media coach and new media savvy, O'Neill took on Reagan man to man, baiting him as the champion of the rich, father of the Beverly Hills budget.
The president truly, in my opinion, doesn't understand the working class, middle America, what it's all about and what they go through because of the fact he doesn't associate himself with those type of people.
I know very much about the working group. I grew up in poverty and got what education I got all by myself and so forth. And I think it is sheer demagoguery.
Despite Reagan's hit, O'Neill had made his point. He put himself on a political par with Reagan. Eventually, polls showed him as popular as Reagan, and he mounted an aggressive Democratic counterattack on sanctions against South Africa.
I can't believe the inhumanity of the White House in doing what they have done.
On cost of living adjustments for Social Security.
You earned that Social Security. Don't let them take it away from you.
And on sweeping tax reform.
December 11th, 12 o'clock noon, will be remembered as the date that Ronald Reagan became a lame duck on the floor of the Congress.
O'Neill not only protected the Democratic hold on the House, but transformed the role of the Speaker.
All those in favor say aye, opposed no. The ayes have it, the bill is passed.
I think he institutionalized the speakership. It began to replicate a White House. In a sense, it became a counter-White House. And people began to quote staff, and they began to quote him as a speaker, as sort of a chief executive of the legislature.
Now the Congress is back, and people say, you know, the president has a harder time with the Congress than he ever had before. That's the way the Founding Fathers wanted. Up until 1928, the Congress was at least an equal with the President of the United States, and in many instances, far more stronger than the President was. And that's what the Founding Fathers wanted. They didn't want regality. They didn't want a king. They didn't want a dictator.
O'Neill is right. Congress is back, more assertive and more unruly, too. For as we have seen, Congress is 1,000 fiefdoms, scores of subcommittees, 535 political egos, each with its own agenda. Too often, it is every member for himself, driven by the money game, the constant campaign, political action committees, and the boundless inventions of an ingenious, energetic staff. Budgets get sidetracked, Congress bogs down. There is simply too much energy and too much talent veering off in too many different directions. Almost too much democracy without the unifying pull of strong political parties. What Congress needs is less new breed razzle-dazzle and more old breed skill at building the coalitions that move policy and make things work. On our next program, The Pentagon Power Game, we will look at why the Pentagon has so much trouble buying weapons that work and why some people think the services are not ready to go to war. This is Hedrick Smith. Thank you for being with us.